Welcome back, 125th Army-Navy game, and I know that our next guest has not been here for all 125 of them, but it feels like it's got to be coming up on 20. Your voice, Assistant Athletic Director and the voice of Black Knight Sports, including the football squad, Rich Demarco, and it's almost become a yearly tradition. I know whether it was Justin Guard with me in the past, John and I talked to you a couple of years ago as well. It's a yearly tradition. It's good to see you again. How pumped are you for this rendition tomorrow?
Well, first of all, great to have to be here and you guys to have me on. That means a lot, and it's exciting, right? It's awesome. This is the game of the year. This is the game everyone cares about. Everyone's going to be watching, and it should be another great one.
So, with while we were chatting and catching up prior to getting on the air here. You mentioned you've had some interactions with Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. I'm trying to do 6 degrees of Todd Monken I'm trying to figure out how this happened.
So I'll tell you, my first interaction with Kevin O'Connell was Army played at San Diego State to open up the 2012 season. Okay,
yeah.
So Kevin O'Connell, he ended up playing in the NFL later that year, but I think he was rehabbing for maybe a back injury or something, so he was doing sidelines for San Diego State radio.
Yeah.
So, like, after the game, well, we had seen him before the game. After the game, he just starts talking to me and our color guy. And he's talking to us for so long, they got to, like, kick us out of the Qualcomm state. Like, look, we're closing up. Nicest guy, telling us stories about playing with Tom Brady, talking about, at the time, Mark Sanchez and the Jets, and had such a deep knowledge of everything. Then he got to do Army games, color, on CBS Sports Network for a couple of years later. You know, saw him a little bit, game days or whatever, and just has it, right? He just has that, I don't know what it is, but you just look at him and the guy gets it, and look at his meteoric rise through the assistant coaching ranks, and you look at what he's done with the challenges he's had in Minnesota. Obviously, it's not charity that he got that job, and he's doing a great job. So I always root for Kevin O'Connell. We got Andre Carter, who's on the practice squad now, but the former Army All-American, and it makes me makes me root for the Vikings.
It's funny you talk about Kevin and just how really in some ways open he is in the ability and the communicator that he is, because we joke about it, and you've been doing this a long time, Rich, where you try to get a quote from Monken after a tough loss, and you might get you might get a minute, you might get 6 words depending upon the game. You can almost set your stopwatch, regardless of the question, regardless of the outcome. It's going to be 90 seconds, no matter what. How's the weather today, Kevin? Well, you wouldn't believe the clouds are coming together and the sunshine's opening up. He's got 90 seconds for you on whatever topic that you want to put in front of him. He's been terrific and such a pleasure to work with, being home of the Vikings. We do our show 9 to noon at the facility every Tuesday, and he chats with our host, Paul Allen, voice of the Vikings. And, he's absolutely A+.
Guy's awesome.
We're lucky to have him. So, speaking of lucky to have a coach, this program has hit its stride. Won 12 of their last 16.
Monken's awesome.
But there was a scare this week. I mean, it looked he was down to top 2 finalists for West Virginia. How happy are you that he stayed? Because he really has this program truly hitting its stride.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, as long as Jeff Monken is going to be the head coach at Army, it's going to be great for Army football. But I'll tell you this, though. Jeff Monken's done a great job. He's been here 11 years. And as he said, and it's true, hey, the best coaches, the teams that are having the best years, those are the coaches who are talked about for these jobs. So if the time comes where, hey, there's an opportunity and he feels it's time to take that, you know what? It's going to be nothing but accolades and love from West Point for what he's done. Now, I'll tell you what, at 11-1 and a chance to go 13-1, which would be the Surface Academy record for wins in a season, and he's now only, 40 wins away from Red Blake for the all-time wins record at West Point, which if you told me someone would come close, I've been here, this is my 21st season, if you had told me someone was going to come close to that record, I would have thought you were nuts here in this modern era. And, that's a real thing now over the next 5 or 6 years. If he stays and if Army keeps on this trajectory, he's going to blow by that record. So I'll tell you what, great that he's staying for Army, of course. But you know what? When the time comes, Army's built a very successful program. It'll be just another challenge, another way to move forward.
Well, was it even a scare, though? I mean, you can't after your first AAC championship and
Coach of the year.
This game on the horizon. Certainly, the getting is good potentially from a national perspective. You can't drop a news nugget like that before Army Navy, right? It was never a scare. Jeff Monken's so good, and Rich Demarco's so good. I think I called him Todd, and he didn't even correct me.
Yeah.
That's how good Rich is. And Monken's been. You remember the Nima Tololo years and the 14-year streak, right? I mean, you said 21st season.
Well,
you started really on the front end of that. I mean, just massive. That's got to be among the 125, maybe one of the largest streaks that any.
The largest streak.
Yeah, and it was ugly at times.
Ugly at times. And 2016 will always be my favorite moment on the air was breaking the streak. And that'll never be matched because there'll never be a 14-win streak again.
They're about
not in our lifetimes.
Right.
So I look at it like, that's the moment. And that's the moment it flipped, right? Because Army's won 6 of 8 since that day. And, hard to say 14 in a row, right? But that's as dominant as you can get. Army's won 12 of their last 16 Service Academy games against Navy and Air Force. Army's 12-4 in their last 16. And you know what that equates from an NFL season, right?
Yeah.
It wins the division. So Army has become, under Jeff Monken, the dominant Service Academy team. It's not just 6 over 8 over Navy. It's 12-4 over the last 16 of Air Force and Navy, which is something I've been around here for 21 years. I wouldn't think could have been possible.
Right. And now, but we're looking also at the first time since 1960 that both Army and Navy were simultaneously in the top 25. I mean, it's been insane.
Insane. And it speaks to, there's a lot of ways we could go with this if we had about 3 hours. But, I think it has to do with the transfer portal. And while things are still regulating right now, I think that there's something to be said when Army's in the American Athletic Conference and I'm prepping a game each week, whether it's Florida Atlantic or whether it's Rice, and I'm seeing 30, 40 new players that are coming through the transfer portal does that necessarily mean your team is getting better? There's just more new players you have to assimilate into the system.
Right.
I think there's something to be said for keeping players 4 years and having them develop. Go from a practice squad player, not having to worry about losing them when they become a starter. And to have someone like Bryson Daly break out his senior year like this, again, we'll see where everything regulates to. But a lot of teams in the American aren't necessarily getting that opportunity. You look at the Tulane quarterback, Darian Mensah, who was a redshirt freshman, burst onto the scene, had a terrific season. He loses to Army in the American Athletic Conference Championship game. Monday, he's in the transfer portal. Wednesday, he's signing with Duke. So, they're not going to get the opportunity to grow that guy for 2 or 3 more years.
How do you think Newberry's done? Second year, right? And that's a tough guy to replace, and Ken. But the work that he has done in a short period of time, he mentions it. You mentioned just how good both teams, and John mentioning that they're both ranked. How do you think he's done now in just on the back end of his second year?
I think he's done a good job. You look at when he came to Navy and really turned around their defense. Came in 2019, and Navy had one of the great years in 2019 and one of the great defensive years. So Navy's defense has always been really good since he came on board. And I think this year, adding Drew Cronick as his offensive coordinator, who did a lot of, this RPO option, wheel route with the running back stuff at Mercer, which has taken a lot of teams by surprise and was a big part of Navy being ranked in the month of October. I think that the offense now is different, right? Defense has always been good. So I like Brian Newberry. Been able to, spend time with him a couple times, interviewing him. I think Navy's in a good place. I think Army's in a good place. And I think that's why we have a game with so much excitement.
Well, how about Bryson Daly, though? I mean, I don't want to say these guys ever pop up out of nowhere, at least from your perspective. But how the fact, and we were talking with a previous guest about this, I mean, when you're putting the touchdowns on the stat sheet the way that he has, and John we were talking about kind of his upbringing, coming from Texas, multi-sport athlete, all of those things. But for a guy to kind of explode onto the scene, I can't necessarily put it in the same vein if you remember like the Keenan Reynolds Navy years. But in the same sense, his season is undeniably as good, maybe as it's been at times, throughout Army's storied history as a football program.
I mean, he's a linebacker playing quarterback.
He's doing everything.
Running over people.
He's just a tank, right?
And I give a lot of credit to the Army offensive line, right? Every member of the Army offensive line was either first team or second team American Athletic Conference, and they give out this award called the Joe Moore Award that goes to the nation's best offensive line. They've announced the 3 finalists. I don't think they've announced the winner yet. The 3 finalists for best offensive line in the nation: Oregon, Texas, and Army. And to see the Army offensive line considered at that level, again, has to do with the transfer portal, right? Army's able to develop these offensive linemen over the course of years, right? Yeah. Army's been able to, and it'll never be an apples-to-apples equalizer, but I have a feeling maybe the way Army and Navy can utilize developing players can at least attempt to even the playing field a little bit with these other teams.
That's Rich Demarco, voice of the Army Black Knights. He said it himself, 21st season Overwatch with this program. A couple more for the Vox.
Yeah, so recently read the article, the SI article about the program, and it sounds like the offensive line coach, and his name is escaping me, starts with a V.
Mike Vitti.
Seems like just an awesome guy, great coach, passionate, very involved in the recruiting process as well, right? He has to be part of the reason also why this offense is just, the offensive line is just mashing on people.
Mike Vitti, West Point graduate, 2008, played 4 years on the football team, knew him well when he was a cadet. I've known him well since he's joined the coaching staff. And he's someone who, when he left the Army, set out to walk across America for Gold Star families.
Awesome.
And that is...
I think that was 2014, wasn't it?
And he finished his walk at
M&T.
the Army-Navy game at M&T Bank Stadium and delivered the game ball. So that...
He's awesome.
Just that snippet of what he did, right, tells you what this guy's all about, right? And he is as much as you want to say, like, if you looked up in the encyclopedia, Army football fullback who's coaching an offensive line, he would just pop right out. There was a hologram, someone that looks like Mike Vitti. But it's an attitude. And I think Jeff Monken, culture, you always hear a lot of buzzwords. Does that really work? Is that really something? But I'll tell you, I don't think it's coincidence. There's several hundred, I think, signs in the Army football facility that say Beat Navy. Bryson Daly ends every interview saying Beat Navy. Hey, Bryson, great talking to you. Good luck. Thanks, Rich. Beat Navy. I mean, there's a reason Army has been able to win these games. The culture, and it's just a great culture. It starts with Jeff Monken, but he's got a great staff under him.
And you said it, last of the hard.
The last of the hard.
Last of the hard.
And that says it all, really, because these kids, and I call them kids, but, they're...
Well, we're old now.
True.
Yeah, we are old. We are old. I'll speak for myself.
And it's the best thing about this game is it's a showcase of our armed forces and the quality of these young men and women, the culture there, like you said, and that does get tossed around a lot, but with them, they live it, they breathe it. After they graduate, they could be fighting on the front lines of a war. It's just a special group.
And look, and there have been, and I think it's, I think the opportunities have been awesome for former Army, Navy, Air Force players to play in the NFL. I think there's a place for that and to help the military. Yeah. I do. Yeah. But the reality is these guys aren't going to the academies for a football career. If that's something that happens over their development, that's great. And I personally think they should be given that opportunity. But they're coming for a higher purpose. They're cashing in their athletic abilities to give themselves this amazing life, right? Whether it's a career in the military, or if it's 5-10 years in the military, then leading a company, right? And carrying that leadership through. So it's a way, it's like this little window, right, at the end of college football regular season to celebrate all that's right? You could do a show on everything that's wrong with college football, right? You could do a week of shows, right? This is 3 hours to celebrate everything right with college football.
Well, and that's and last question specifically about the game, but that is one of the reasons that I love Army, Navy, and Radio Row so much. I mean, in the radio business, you spend so much of your time. It is constantly ragging on what is wrong, what went wrong in a game. This particular news article, what went wrong in the brain of XYZ player, or coach, etc. This is truly the build-up. This truly is a lift-up that ultimately has no breakdown. Now, with the game tomorrow, if we're just judging it nuts and bolts, Army should run with this thing and run in a big way. However, these games aren't like that.
Me now.
And that's what I'm saying. It's never like that.
Right now.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So what's popping in your head as you're preparing yourself for the call tomorrow? Just for actually just looking at the game itself. These games never line up based on how stats and personnel work. There's always something special to each of these things. What are you looking for tomorrow?
You know, these games are like played in a phone booth, or is that even a thing anymore, a phone booth, right? But I mean, they're rock fights, right?
Yeah.
You know, there's no team better equipped to defend Navy than Army. There's no team better equipped to defend Army than Navy. It scares me that Army's a favorite because Navy hasn't had a bad year.
Right.
Now, if Navy was 3-8, or, you know, an Army was 11, I could see it, right? But Navy's losses have been a result of injuries, namely to their quarterback, Blake Horvath, who now is 100% healthy. So, look, the people that create those lines know a lot more. They got a lot more insight about games than I do. I'm just saying is this game has come down to turnovers and especially special teams the past couple of years. And Army's gotten those special teams breaks with field goal kicking, with field position, with turnovers. And I don't think that's by accident. I think it's the attention to detail, the culture from Jeff Monken. So you could say that's luck. I don't think it's luck. I think it's the preparation meeting the opportunity to make those plays. I think that'll continue, but I think that manifests itself into a 3-point win by a field goal, like 17-14.
Oh, beautiful. Thanks as always.
Oh, please.
It's always a pleasure every single year.
We get to talk about Kevin O'Connell, who, I mean, he is, I've had a couple the guy is like the freaking best.
He is.
Okay?
Sam Darnold agrees, and I think Sam Darnold should probably give him a cut of whatever contract he ends up with.
I'm a big New York Jets fan, and I thought Todd Bowles and Sam Darnold would have been a good tandem, but that's a whole other thing. I'm a big Todd Bowles fan.
Well, this being a Jets fan thing, I can almost guarantee if Sam Darnold doesn't stay in Minnesota, he probably won't return to the Jets.
But wouldn't he be a great addition if you took his history away, right? That would be the exact kind of quarterback the Jets would be looking for.
It's almost like you guys drafted him. That's Rich Demarco, voice of Black Knights football. Clearly another segment, Go Army, Beat Navy, being the flavor of it. Rich Demarco, one of the best. And John Kriesel is here with me, Nordo. It's pregame up to Army-Navy, 125 right here on the Fan.